Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Joanne Smedley, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Matthew Dingley. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors. Please stand and join in the singing of the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we pay tribute to Flying Officer Charles Jackson Cameron, who was killed on active service with the Royal Australian Air Force during the Second World War. Born in Adelaide on the 7th of November 1913, Charles Jackson Cameron was the son of Daniel and Margaret Cameron. Before the outbreak of the Second World War, Charles Cameron was working as a lorry driver and storeman. On the 1st of June 1940, he married Eileen Vera and 9 days later enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. Posted to the 2nd 9th Field Regiment, Cameron commenced training at Ingleburn, then at Holsworthy. In April 1941, the 2nd 9th Field Regiment embarked for overseas service, arriving in the Middle East the following month. Shortly afterwards, Cameron received news that his wife had given birth to a daughter, Joyce Marie. Cameron served with the regiment in the Middle East for the rest of the year. In early 1942, it was recalled to Australia following Japan's entry into the war. During this period, he was in and out of hospital, having contracted malaria. After convalescing, he returned to his unit in June 1942 and got into disciplinary trouble and was court-martialed for disobeying a command by an officer. In February 1943, Cameron requested a discharge from the AIF so he could enlist in the Royal Australian Air Force. His request granted, he joined the RAF on the 2nd of March 1943 and commenced training to become an air gunner, first at Linfield, then at Narrandera. After Narrandera, Cameron went to the No. 1 Bombing and Air Gunner School at Evans Head, where he completed his gunner course, receiving his air gunner's badge and was commissioned as a pilot officer. While Cameron was training, on the 25th of June 1943, his wife gave birth to their second child, Renee. On the 4th of November 1943, he embarked in Sydney for overseas service as part of the Empire Air Training Scheme. Cameron was one of almost 27,500 RAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, gunners and engineers who, throughout the course of the war, joined squadrons based in Britain. After arriving in Britain in December, Cameron undertook further training before he was assigned to the crew of Squadron Leader Eric LePage Langlois, learning to fly the 4-engine Avro Lancaster heavy bombers at number 1661 Heavy Conversion Unit. Following completion of the course, Cameron's crew were posted to number 463 Squadron, an Australian heavy bomber squadron serving in Bomber Command. Cameron flew 11 operations with 463 Squadron before Langlois and his crew were transferred to number 467 Squadron, Royal Australian Air Force, in October 1944. Cameron was flying his 10th operation with 467 Squadron, his 21st operation in total, when he and 4 of his crewmates were killed in action on the night of the 3rd of March 1945. Langlois' Lancaster was taking part in a large raid on the Dortmund-Ems Canal at Ladbergen, Germany, when it was shot down by the enemy Messerschmitt Me-110 night fighter. Cameron, along with his fellow Australians, Wing Commander Langlois, flying officers Alan Reid and Evan Patton, and British crewmate Flight Sergeant John Scott were all killed in the incident. The 2 survivors, both Australians, flying officers Joseph Wilmot and Ray Taylor, spent the rest of the war as prisoners of war. They reported that all of the crew managed to bail out and land safely. It is believed that the 5 killed were recovered and murdered by SS troops. Their place of burial is unknown. Charles Cameron was 31 years old. His name is commemorated on the Air Force's memorial overlooking the River Thames, which lists the missing of British and Commonwealth airmen with no known grave. His name is also listed here on the Roll of Honour on my left, among some 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flying Officer Charles Jackson Cameron, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms and the hope of a better world. They shall grow not old,
as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.